I slowed down my old, wheezing Fiat just as I reached the edge of Derby, near that familiar brick house my daughter now calls home. The car gave a final rattle like a sigh hand died in the driveway. Typical. I could have replaced it months ago, but I told myself the money was better used elsewhere, like helping Emily and her family with their mortgage, for instance. Priorities. In my bag, I carried an apple pie. I'd baked it that morning using my mother's old recipe. Emily used to love it as a child. These days, though, she probably finds it too old-fashioned. Too simple. But her kids Havish and Willow, they still adored their grandmother's baking. That counted for something. I climbed the front steps with more nerves than I cared to admit. Visiting Emily had started to feel like walking through a minefield. One wrong step, and boom, something would blow up. Still, I knocked 3 times. Our old family code. I doubted she even remembered. Jeremy, my son-in-law, opened the door. He looked tired, his smile tight. "Tallulah, hey," he said, stepping aside. "Come in. Emily's in the kitchen." As I stepped inside, I noticed a new painting hanging in the hallway. Abstract, expensive-looking, another purchase. Just a month ago, Emily was complaining she couldn't afford Havish's school trip. I said nothing. I'd learned to keep my opinions to myself. Then came the best part, Havish. He ran out of the living room like a burst of sunshine. 14 and already taller than I was. "Grandma!" he shouted, hugging me tight. I handed him a small box. "New headphones, like you asked," I whispered. His face lit up. But then Emily appeared, kitchen towel in hand. "Mom, did you bring gifts again?" she snapped. "We talked about this. Havish has to earn things, not just get them handed to him." "He did earn them," I said softly. "He got an A in math." She sighed. "Heavy. Take them upstairs and help set the table." He gave me an apologetic look and disappeared. I stood in the hallway, coat still on, heart sinking already, and I hadn't even made it to the dinner table yet. Dinner that night felt like sitting on glass, shiny, fragile, and cold. Emily barely looked up from her plate. She picked at her food like it was a chore, while Jeremy tried to fill the silence with small talk. "So, how's the garden, Tula? Any new neighbors?" he asked politely. I appreciated the effort, but the conversation kept slipping into awkward pauses, like everyone was waiting for something to go wrong. Havish chewed silently, his headphones already forgotten upstairs. Willow, 17 now, stared into her phone like it held the answers to the universe. I glanced at her. So much like her mother, at that age's same high cheekbones, same sharp beauty, but her eyes were different, guarded, harder. Trying to ease the tension, I brought up Emily's work. "I heard your bakery's doing well," I said gently. "Congratulations on the promotion." Emily didn't even look up. "It's okay," she muttered. 15% more pay, 3 times the stress." Jeremy jumped in, trying to add light. "But it helps, especially with the mortgage." That was my cue to stay silent. I caught the hint. Later, as we cleared the plates, I reached for my bag. "I brought apple pie," I said, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd bring something special." Emily didn't even blink. "We already bought tiramisu," she said flatly. "Next time, maybe let us know?" That stung. The pie had taken all morning, made from a recipe I'd used since Emily was a little girl. I'd baked it for every birthday, every holiday, but now it was just dismissed. "It's okay," I said, still smiling, though it barely reached my eyes. "Tiramisu's fine." "Can we have both?" Havish asked, hopeful. "I want Grandma's cake." "We should save it for breakfast," Jeremy said quickly, glancing at me with an apologetic look. And just like that, my place at the table felt negotiable. Later, as we talked about the upcoming holidays, I suggested gently, "There's a Mother's Day festival in Marvin Park. Maybe we could all go? I could make a reservation at that Italian place you love." Emily looked up, her voice sharp. "Actually, Mom, we were thinking just the 4 of us this year. Me, Jeremy, and the kids." I froze. Mother's Day, and I wasn't invited. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her. Emily, my daughter. The same girl I used to carry on my hip. The one I read bedtime stories to. The one I scraped money together to send to dance camp in the summers. And now here she wasteling me. I wasn't part of Mother's Day. Jeremy shifted awkwardly in his seat. Of course your family, Tula, he said quickly. We just thought maybe this year would be low-key. No offense, Mom, Emily added, as if that made it easier. But you understand. Mother's Day is for me and the kids. I couldn't speak. My voice caught in my throat. I managed a tight smile, nodded once, and stood up from the table. Well, I said softly, I won't keep you then. Mom, don't be dramatic. Emily rolled her eyes. I'm not being dramatic, I said, gathering my coat. Thank you for dinner. Everything was lovely, but I should get going. Grandma, Havish said, confused. You just got here. I ruffled his hair. I've got things to take care of, dear. Jeremy followed me to the door, concern etched across his face. Tula, don't leave like this. Emily didn't mean. Yes, she did. I cut in quietly, not angry, just tired. And that's fine. She has a right to choose how she celebrates. I turned to face the children, me grandchildren. Willow, silent and unsure. Havish, still looking hurt. The pie's for you, I told them gently. Enjoy it, okay? Then I closed the door behind me. Quietly. I didn't slam it. That would have been too easy. I sat in my silent car for a long time before I turned the key. My hands trembled a little. The car groaned to life, and I pulled away from the house brick and beautiful, the one I'd been helping pay for the last 6 years, the one they said I wasn't welcome in next Sunday. A single tear escaped and slid down my cheek, but I wiped it away fast. I'd cried enough in my life. I wasn't going to do it now, not over this. Not anymore. That night, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, wrapped in an old knit shawl, sipping lukewarm tea. The silence was thick. The kind that fills a room when something inside you has broken, but you're too proud to let it show. I kept hearing her words. We were thinking just the 4 of us this year. Like I was a neighbor. Like I hadn't given half my life. My savings, my health to keep her afloat. I stood up and went to the drawer in my desk. The one where I kept all the papers, the ones Emily never asked about. There they were. Bank statements, transfer confirmations. Line after line. £400. Every 15th of the month. Like clockwork. For 6 years. I did the math. Nearly £29,000. Money I could have spent fixing this damn car. Visiting Italy, like I always dreamed. Treating my arthritis, which had gotten worse since I stopped working double shifts. Instead, I paid for a house I wasn't even welcome in on Mother's Day. I opened my banking app. My fingers hovered over the screen. I hesitated not because I didn't want to do it, but because I knew what it meant. Emily would panic. She'd lash out. She might even tell the kids not to see me. But somewhere deep down, I also knew this. I wasn't helping anymore. I was enabling, and it had to stop. With 3 taps, I canceled the automatic transfer. 2 more clicks, and the account was closed. The balance, just over £2,000, moved to my main account. That was it. No fireworks, no drama, just silence and a strange, almost unfamiliar feeling of relief. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Havish. Thanks for the headphones, Grandma. They're awesome. Sorry about Mom yesterday. I smiled, even as my eyes welled up. At least the kids hadn't inherited her coldness. You're welcome, sweetheart. I texted back. Don't worry. Everything's fine. That was a lie, of course. Nothing was fine. But he didn't need to know that. Then came the call. Marley, best friend from nursing school. Her voice was hoarse and concerned. Tula, are you okay? You didn't answer last night. I was at Emily's, I replied quietly. It didn't go well. I told her everything. Marl didn't hold back. You've let her walk over you for too long, she said firmly. Stop paying for that house. Let her grow up. And for once, I didn't argue. It was nearly 9 o'clock when the knock came. Firm, unexpected. I wasn't expecting anyone. My hands froze over my knitting. For a second, I thought about not answering. But then I heard the voice. Tula, it's Jeremy. Can I come in? I opened the door slowly. There he stood pale, worn out, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept. He was holding a folder. Is everything all right? I asked, stepping aside. The kids are fine, he said, walking in. But we need to talk. About Emily. And the mortgage. We sat in the living room. He placed the folder on the coffee table with a kind of heaviness, like it weighed more than paper, more than numbers. Today, the bank sent a late notice, he began. At first, I didn't understand. We usually manage. Emily always said the mortgage was covered. He rubbed his face. But tonight, she confessed, that you've been paying half of it, every month, for 6 years. I stared at him. You didn't know? He laughed bitterly. Tula, I thought she was using bonuses from work. She told me she had a savings account. I had no idea your money was what kept this house afloat. He opened the folder. Inside were printed statements, lines highlighted in yellow. I checked all our records. Your transfers show up every 15th, like clockwork, £400, for 6 years. I stayed silent, unsure what to say. A part of me was relieved he hadn't known. Another part, it broke all over again. How deep had the deception gone? Why didn't you tell me? He asked, voice thick with regret. All these dinners, holidays, you never said a word. I thought you knew, I whispered. Emily said you both preferred not to talk about it, that it made you feel emasculated. Jeremy looked like someone had punched him in the gut. She told me we were doing this together, he said, eyes wet. That we were building this life as a team, while she was using your money and spending mine on handbags and spa days. I blinked. Spa days? He nodded. Hundreds of pounds, gone. Meanwhile, I was working weekends, thinking we were barely scraping by. I reached across and touched his hand. Jeremy, I didn't mean to come between you. I just wanted to help. I know, he said, clutching my hand. That's why I'm here. Not to ask for more, but to say I'm sorry. For not knowing. For letting you carry this burden. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, So, what now? I exhaled slowly. Now? I think it's time for Emily to stand on her own. Jeremy nodded. And maybe it's time we all start being honest. With each other and with ourselves. Jeremy called the next morning. His voice was steady but serious. We need to talk. All of us. 4 o'clock today. Can you come? I hesitated. Does Emily know? She does. She didn't want to at first, but I insisted. The kids will be there too. It's time they heard the truth. I agreed, though. A lump sat in my throat the rest of the day. I wasn't sure if I was walking into a conversation or a battlefield. By 4 o'clock, I stood again on the doorstep of the house I'd helped keep standing for 6 years. This time, no pie, no gift, just the weight of truth in my chest. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. The living room was full, but no one was speaking. Emily sat stiffly in an armchair, her face pale and unreadable. Willow and Havish were on the couch, quiet but alert. Jeremy stood in the center like a mediator. We're here because too much has been said behind backs, Jeremy began, and too much has been hidden. He turned to the kids. You both know about the mortgage issue, but you don't know everything. He took a deep breath. For 6 years, your grandmother has been paying half our mortgage. I didn't know. She did it quietly, without asking for anything. Willow looked at her mom in shock. You never told Dad? Emily crossed her arms. He didn't need to know. He already worked so hard I didn't want to make him feel like a failure. Jeremy shook his head. Don't lie, Emily. You didn't tell me because you wanted control, because you wanted to look like you had it all handled. What are you talking about? She snapped. I'm talking about the designer bags, the spa bills. While I was working overtime, you were spending like nothing was wrong. Willow and Havish exchanged confused glances. My heart ached for them. Mom, Havish asked quietly, did you really spend Grandma's money on stuff? Emily didn't answer. Her silence said more than words. I spoke gently. Sweethearts, I gave to help, but it hurt to be erased. I brought that bike for your birthday. Havishon found out later Emily told you it was from them. Willow sat up. Wait, the laptop for school. Was that you too? I nodded. She looked at her mom, betrayed. Jeremy looked at Emily one last time. You lied to all of us, Em. To me, to them, to yourself. Emily's voice cracked. I just wanted to be enough. I didn't want my kids to think we needed saving. No one needed saving, I said softly. We just needed the truth. The room was thick, with silence sown of those heavy, unspoken pauses where no one dares to move, afraid it might break something even more. Emily finally spoke. You don't understand, she whispered, staring at the carpet. You never did. We all looked at her, waiting. I remember being 15 and wearing thrift store clothes while the other girls wore brand names. I remember pretending I wasn't hungry at lunch because I didn't have money for snacks. I remember working part-time just to buy one pair of jeans that didn't make me feel ashamed. Her voice cracked. I know you did your best, Mom. I know you worked 2 jobs, but I always felt less than, and I swore I'd never let my kids feel that. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Emily looked up at me, eyes filled with old pain. So, when you started helping us again, the down payment, the college bills, the mortgage, I told myself it was temporary. But then it kept going. And every time I accepted your help, I felt smaller, like I was failing, like I was right back in that thrift store again. I stepped toward her gently. Emily, I never meant for you to feel that way. But I did, she said, and I hated it. So I lied to Jeremy, to the kids, even to myself. I spent that money trying to look like someone who didn't need help, like someone who made it. She covered her face with her hands. I didn't want to be the daughter who still leaned on her mother at 39. I wanted to be enough. Willow stood slowly and walked to her mother. Mom, we never needed perfect. We just needed you to be honest. Emily looked at her daughter, really looked, and her composure finally cracked. I'm sorry, she said through tears. I didn't mean to lie to you. I didn't know how else to keep things from falling apart. I came closer too. Sweetheart, I said softly. You never had to prove anything to me. My love was never based on your success or failure. But you always asked, Emily murmured. Why I didn't finish college. Why I settled. Why I didn't try harder. I always felt like a disappointment. That hit me hard. I never realized my questions sounded like judgments. I only asked because I wanted you to be happy, I said, voice low. To have more than I did. But maybe I pushed too hard. Jeremy spoke at last. We've all made mistakes, but it ends here. No more hiding, no more pretending. And for the first time in years, we all nodded in agreement. Not as mother and daughter, husband and wife, or children and parents, but as a family. Finally willing to look each other in the eye. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy. No one spoke for a while, as if we were all trying to figure out what this new silence meant. But it wasn't the silence of resentment anymore. It was something else, something softer. Havish was the first to move. The boy stood from the couch, crossed the room, and stood in front of his mother. Mom, he said quietly but clearly, I don't care if Grandma helped. I don't care if we had money or not. I love you, but I wish you'd told us the truth. Emily looked up at him, broken and vulnerable. I was afraid, she whispered, afraid you'd love me less. That's silly, Havish replied with a crooked smile. You're my mom. I'm not going anywhere. Willow joined him. And I'm sorry, Grandma, she said, turning to me, for not saying thank you, for not knowing how much you did. I felt my heart ache and swell at once. "It's not too late, sweetheart," I said, opening my arms. She walked into them without hesitation, followed by her brother. Emily stood slowly, her eyes locked onto Maynard, puffy but honest. "Mom," she said, "I owe you more apologies than I can count. I didn't just lie to you. I made you feel like you weren't part of our lives. And that was wrong." I stepped forward, slowly, and placed my hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for saying that." She broke down, not loudly, just a quiet sob that came from years of pressure, of masks, of silence. I held her, and she clung to me like a child again just for a moment. Jeremy came and stood beside us, placing his hand on Emily's back. "We're going to fix this," he said. "All of it. And we're going to do it together. No more secrets." I nodded, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed him. That night didn't solve everything. There were still wounds, still stories untold, still trust to rebuild. But the ice had cracked. The walls had shifted. Before I left, Willow handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo I had taken of her when she was 6, laughing in the backyard sprinkler. She'd kept it all these years. "Will you come to my graduation next year?" she asked. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I walked out of that house with empty hands but a full heart, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like family. A few days later, Jeremy showed up at my door again, this time not with red eyes or a folder full of guilt, but with purpose. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, holding a slim stack of papers and a small notebook. "Not at all," I said, waving him inside. "Tea?" He shook his head. "This won't take long." He placed the papers on the table and sat down across from me. "Emily and I have been talking," he began. "A lot. About the house, the money, everything. And we both agreed. It's time we take full responsibility for our lives." I nodded, listening quietly. "We've done some math. The total amount you've contributed to the mortgage is just under £29,000. That's enormous, and we can't undo it. But we want to try to repay what we cannot because you asked for it, but because it's the right thing to do." He opened the notebook, showing me a plan. £150 a month for the next 16 years. I chuckled. "Jeremy, I'll be almost 90 by the time that's done." "I know," he said, smiling. "It's symbolic more than anything. It's about dignity, about us learning to stand on our own 2 feet. I looked at him, really looked. This wasn't the awkward son-in-law from before. This was a man stepping into real leadership, not control, not arrogance, just quiet, firm responsibility. "All right," I said, after a pause. "I have a counter-proposal." He raised an eyebrow. "Don't pay me back," I said. "Not directly. Instead, take that money and start a savings fund for Willow and Havish, for their college, their future, their dreams. Set aside £100 a month. Make it a habit. Show them what financial commitment really looks like." Jeremy's face softened. That's actually perfect." "As for the rest," I continued, "consider it a gift. Not a loan, not a bribe. A gift from a woman who just wanted to see her family succeed, even if she went about it the wrong way sometimes." He stood up, walked around the table, and hugged me tight. "Thank you, Tula, for everything." Before he left, he added one last thing. "We're also setting new ground rules. Emily's in therapy now. She's working through a lot, and we both agree, no more hidden help. If we ever need something, we'll ask openly. And if you want to help, it'll be discussed. Fair and square." I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. Honesty, not secrecy. "And about the kids? I'll always be part of their lives," I interrupted gently. "But I'll let them see the real me, not the silent ATM. If I want to buy them something, I'll tell them it's from me. And if I can't, I'll say so." He nodded. "They deserve that." As Jeremy left, I felt something shift inside me, like a knot had finally loosened. We had established not just financial clarity, but emotional clarity too. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about trust, respect, boundaries, and finally, freedom. Mother's Day arrived with clear skies and warm sunlight pouring through my kitchen window. I had woken up early not from habit, but from something else, a feeling I hadn't known in a long time. Peace. The past few weeks had been difficult, no doubt, but necessary. The truth had spilled out. The damage had been seen for what it was, and somehow we had survived it, maybe even grown from it. At precisely 11 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "We'll be ready at 2. If you want to bring your apple pie, Havish would be thrilled." Just like that, something in my chest cracked open, not from pain this time, but from a quiet, unexpected joy. I spent the next hour in my small kitchen, peeling apples and rolling out dough the way I had done 100 times before. But this time, it wasn't about obligation or tradition. It was a gift tone I was glad to give. When I arrived at their house, the door swung open, and Havish greeted me with a wide grin. "Happy Mother's Day, Grandma," he said, wrapping his arms around me like he used to when he was 5. The living room looked different. There were flowers on the table, and framed photos on the mantel, including one I had taken years ago of Emily and Willow reading together. My photo, my moment. Emily walked out of the kitchen, apron dusted with flour. "Hi, Mom," she said, giving me a hug that didn't feel forced. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." We sat at the table, Jeremy carving the roast, Willow pouring sparkling cider, Havish setting down extra forks. There was no drama, no tension, just effort, real effort. Emily handed me a small box before we ate. Inside was a silver brooch shaped like a medical cross. "I remembered you always wanted one when you worked at the hospital," she said shyly. "You said it was too expensive back then." I blinked back tears. "It's beautiful. Thank you." After dinner, I passed out small, framed photozone for each of them. Moments I'd captured and printed from my new photography class. Jeremy teaching Havish to hammer a nail. Willow dancing in the rain. Emily at 5 sitting on my lap with a book. Emily looked at hers for a long time. "I don't remember this day," she said. "We were reading Alice in Wonderland." I smiled. "You asked me to read the same chapter over and over again." She placed the photo carefully on the mantel. "It's staying right here." Later, as we cleared dishes, Emily turned to me. "Mom," she said quietly, "I'm not perfect. I still have a lot to work through. But I want you to know I'm grateful for all of it. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it." I squeezed her hand. It's never too late to start over. And that's what we were doing, really. Starting over. Not from scratch, but from honesty. And this time, with love that wasn't tied to money, or guilt, or silence. Just love, the kind that holds on, even when everything else falls away.